Mother's Day is for mothers who know their place. That was what my daughter Lauren told me at 9:17 on a Sunday morning while I stood in my kitchen in Newport Beach with a warm lemon cake cooling on the counter and a framed photograph tucked under my arm. I remember the time because I had just looked at the clock above the stove, wondering if I should leave in 10 minutes or 15. The brunch was at noon at Lauren's house in Newport Coast, and I didn't want to arrive too early. I never wanted to be in the way. Not with Lauren. Not anymore. I was wearing the cream cardigan she had bought me 3 Christmases ago, back when she still remembered my size without asking. On the table beside my purse sat a Mother's Day card I had written for her, even though she was the daughter and I was the mother. That was how it had always been between us. I gave first. I softened first. I apologized first, even when I didn't know what I had done. When my phone rang and her name appeared, I smiled. God help me, I smiled. I thought she was calling to ask if I wanted her to save me a seat near the window, or if I could bring the old photo album from the beach house, the one with her gap-toothed smile and her pink plastic sunglasses. Instead, Lauren exhaled like I was already exhausting her. Mom, don't come today. I held the cake knife in my right hand. I hadn't even cut the lemon slices for the top yet. Don't come where? I asked because sometimes the heart needs the mind to pretend.
To brunch, she said.
Ethan and I talked. His clients will be there, and I can't have you making everything emotional. The kitchen went very still. Outside my window, a neighbor's sprinklers clicked across a strip of lawn. Inside, my daughter erased me from Mother's Day in the same voice she used to reschedule a dentist appointment. Lauren, I said carefully, it's Mother's Day. There was a pause. Not a guilty pause. An impatient one. Then she said it. Yes, Mom. But Mother's Day is for mothers who know their place. I did not drop the phone. I did not cry. I did not ask her why she was doing this. I only looked at the framed photograph under my arm. Lauren was 8 in that picture, standing barefoot on the deck of our Laguna Beach house, sunburned across the nose, laughing while her father held up a crooked paper sign that said, Happy Mother's Day, Maggie. Richard had made pancakes that morning. Lauren had spilled orange juice on my robe. I had called it perfect. I see, I said. Lauren softened her voice then, the way she always did after cutting me. Please don't make this dramatic. We'll see you another time. Another time. That was what people said when they wanted you to disappear politely. I looked at the cake, the card, the photograph, the purse I had already packed with a small gift wrapped in blue tissue paper. Then I looked down the hallway toward the drawer where I kept the deed to the beach house. No, I whispered after the call ended. Not another time. By 6 that evening, my daughter would be crying in front of the same guests she protected from me, begging me not to sign away the beach house she had already promised her husband. But that morning, all she knew was that she had uninvited her mother. She had no idea she had just reminded me whose name was still on everything. After Lauren hung up, I stood in my kitchen for a long time with the phone still in my hand. The screen had gone dark, but I kept staring at it as if her words might change if I waited long enough. They did not. The lemon cake sat on the counter between 2 folded paper towels, still warm, still smelling like sugar and butter, and the little bit of zest Richard used to say made the whole house feel alive. I had woken up at 6 to bake it because Lauren used to love that cake when she was a girl. She would pick off the candied lemon slices first and pretend I did not notice. I noticed everything.
Mother's Day. That. Đã hết thời gian chờ gửi tin nhắn. Vui lòng thử lại.
The beach house in Laguna was never supposed to be an asset. I hate that word now. Asset. It sounds clean, useful, easy to move from one column to another. That house was not a column. It was not a number. It was 38 years of salt air, unpaid weekends, careful repairs, and my husband Richard standing on a wooden ladder in faded jeans, telling me he could fix anything as long as I kept bringing him iced tea. We bought it in 1986, back when Laguna Beach still had little places a school secretary and a hardware store manager could dream about if they were willing to stretch every dollar until it nearly screamed. It was not grand then. The paint was peeling. The deck boards creaked. The kitchen had yellow tile I never liked and a refrigerator that hummed so loudly at night I used to joke it was trying to sing us to sleep. But from the first afternoon we walked through the front door, Richard squeezed my hand and said, "Maggie, this is where our girl is going to remember being loved." Lauren was 5 then. She ran straight through the house and out to the back deck like the ocean had called her by name. She scraped her knee on the steps that first summer. She lost her first tooth in the downstairs bathroom. She learned to make scrambled eggs standing on a wooden stool beside me in that tiny kitchen. Every Memorial Day weekend, Richard would drag out the old grill, and Lauren would decorate the railing with paper flags from the drugstore. Every 4th of July, she fell asleep before the fireworks were done, curled against my shoulder with sand still between her toes. After Richard got sick, that house became harder to keep. Medical bills do not ask whether you have memories attached to a mortgage. Property taxes do not care that your daughter once built seashell castles in the yard. I took extra bookkeeping work from a friend in Irvine. I cleaned offices 2 nights a week for almost a year and told Lauren I had joined a church committee because I did not want her to worry. I sold my diamond anniversary necklace when the roof needed replacing. Richard never knew that part. He was already too tired by then, and I refused to let him spend his last months apologizing for the cost of leaving me. After he passed, people told me to sell the beach house.
They meant well.
Some of them did. They said it was too much for one woman. Too much maintenance. Too much money. Too many memories.
But
Lauren was 16 when she stood in the upstairs bedroom, staring at the water through tears she did not want me to see, and whispered, "Mom, please do not ever sell it. It feels like Dad is still here." So I kept it. I kept it through repairs I could barely afford. I kept it through termites, storm damage, insurance increases, and years when I skipped vacations because the house needed new windows. I kept it because my daughter asked me to. I kept it because I thought legacy meant love carried forward. For years, Lauren said that too. She called it our place. Then, after she married Ethan, the words began to change. Our place became the Laguna property. The house became the asset. Memories became equity. One afternoon, she stood in the kitchen where her father had once burned pancakes and said, "Mom, you need to think practically. A property like this should be working for the family." I remember looking at her then, really looking, and feeling something small shift inside me. Not break. Not yet. Just shift. Like an old floorboard giving one quiet warning before it gives way. A week before that Sunday morning, Lauren came to my house carrying a blue folder and a smile I had learned not to trust. It was a Wednesday afternoon, warm enough that I had opened the kitchen window, and the smell of jasmine from the side yard drifted in while I washed 2 coffee mugs in the sink. She arrived without calling first. That used to mean she missed me.
now, it usually meant she wanted something.
Ethan was with her, wearing sunglasses indoors for the first few seconds before he remembered himself and took them off. Lauren kissed my cheek lightly, the way people do when they are afraid makeup might transfer. "Mom, we brought something for you to review," she said, placing the folder on the kitchen table like it was a gift. I dried my hands slowly. The folder was the exact color of the ocean on a clear morning in Laguna. That bothered me more than it should have. "What is it?" I asked. Ethan pulled out a chair without being invited and sat down. "Just some estate planning cleanup," he said. Nothing dramatic. There was that word again.
Dramatic.
In my daughter's house, sadness was dramatic. Questions were dramatic. Memory was dramatic. Anything I felt that made Lauren uncomfortable became dramatic. She opened the folder and turned the pages toward me. There were highlighted lines, sticky tabs, signature marks, and words that looked harmless until you had lived long enough to know better. Management authority. Transfer provisions. Durable financial control. "It is really just to simplify things," Lauren said. Her voice was soft. Too soft. "You know how complicated property can get in California. Ethan has a friend who works with real estate families, and he said it would be smarter if we got ahead of everything." I looked at the first page. My name was printed neatly at the top. Margaret Elaine Whitaker. Below it was the address of the beach house. My beach house. Richard's beach house. The place my daughter had once begged me never to sell. Got ahead of what? I asked. Lauren sighed and reached for my hand. Mom, you are 71. You are healthy, thank God, but you live alone. You still drive down to Laguna by yourself. You still deal with contractors by yourself. What happens if something goes wrong? Ethan leaned forward. This lets us help you manage the property before there is a crisis. I kept my hand still under Lauren's. Manage it how? He smiled quickly. Repairs, insurance, rental potential, tax strategy, basic protection. Lauren squeezed my fingers. No one is taking anything from you. That was the sentence that made me look up, because I had not said anyone was. I told them I needed time to read it. Lauren's smile thinned, but she nodded. Of course. Just do not overthink it. Then I stood to make tea, because I was raised to offer tea even when my instincts were standing in the middle of the room with both hands raised. While the kettle filled, their voices dropped behind me. Not enough. Ethan said, she has to sign before summer. I already told Mark we would have control by then. Lauren whispered, she will. After brunch, I will make her feel included, then guilty. She always signs when she thinks she is keeping the family together. The water kept running over my hand. I turned it off. I did not move. I did not breathe loudly. I let the kitchen hold me upright. When I came back to the table, I carried 3 cups of tea and the same face I had worn through funerals, medical bills, and years of pretending I was fine. Lauren smiled at me. Ethan thanked me. The blue folder sat between us like a trap with my name printed on it. By noon that Sunday, Lauren's brunch was already online. I know because my phone lit up while I sat at my kitchen table with the lemon cake still untouched and the blue folder closed beside it. I had not opened the folder again after Lauren left it with me. I did not need to. I had heard enough in my own kitchen. Still, some foolish part of me had waited all week for her to call and say she was sorry, or nervous, or overwhelmed, or anything that sounded like the daughter I remembered. She did not. She sent one text on Friday evening that said, "Please remember to bring the folder Sunday. Ethan wants to make sure we do not lose momentum." Not "I love you." Not "I cannot wait to see you." The folder. That was what mattered. Then, on Sunday morning, after she told me not to come, she posted the first photograph at 12:08 in the afternoon. I was not looking for it. It appeared because my niece Paula commented with 3 little hearts, and the picture rose to the top of my phone like it wanted to introduce itself. There was Lauren's dining room, bright and perfect, with white tulips in a crystal vase and pale pink napkins folded like fans. There were mimosas in tall glasses, smoked salmon on silver trays, little quiches arranged in circles, and a bakery cake that said "Celebrating Strong Women" in looping icing. Lauren stood at the center in a soft blue dress, smiling with both hands resting on the shoulders of her mother-in-law, Diane. Diane sat at the head of the table. My place, if there had ever been one, was not empty. It had been filled. I stared at that photograph longer than I should have. I noticed everything. The good china Lauren had borrowed from me 3 years earlier and never returned. The pearl earrings I gave her when she turned 40. The white linen tablecloth from the beach house closet. Then, I saw the caption, "Celebrating the women who show up with grace." I read it twice. Not because I did not understand it, because I did. My daughter had not just uninvited me. She had replaced me and dressed the replacement in my belongings. A second photograph came 20 minutes later. This one showed Ethan laughing with 2 men I did not recognize, both wearing expensive watches and golf shirts with country club logos. One of them stood near Lauren's patio doors, holding a champagne flute, while Ethan pointed towards something outside like he was explaining a plan. Under it, Lauren wrote, "Big dreams."
Đã hết thời gian chờ gửi tin nhắn. Vui lòng thử lại.
On Monday morning, I woke before sunrise with the blue folder on my kitchen table and Lauren's Mother's Day message still glowing in my mind like a sign I should have read years earlier. Please do not show up anyway. I made coffee, but I did not drink it. I cut one thin slice from the lemon cake, then wrapped the rest and put it in the refrigerator, as if saving it could save the woman I had been the day before. The house was quiet in that way houses get when they have heard too much. I sat at the table and opened the folder again. This time, I did not read it as a mother trying to trust her daughter. I read it as a woman whose name was on the deed. The words looked different in the morning. Cleaner, colder, authority to manage, lease, improve, encumber, refinance, and transfer interest as deemed appropriate. I read that sentence 4 times. Then I took out a yellow legal pad and wrote down everything I remembered. The blue folder. Ethan saying he had already told Mark they would have control by summer. Lauren saying she would make me feel included, then guilty. The brunch I was not allowed to attend. The photo she posted with another woman sitting where a mother should have been. I did not write how it felt. Feelings can be denied. Dates cannot. Words cannot. Paper cannot. At 8:30, I called David Morrison. He had handled Richard's estate after the funeral, back when I could barely sign my own name without crying. He was in his late 60s now, calm, careful, the kind of attorney who never raised his voice because he never needed to. His assistant answered, and when I said my name, she softened immediately. Mrs. Whitaker, are you all right? I looked at the blue folder. No, I said, but I am thinking clearly. David called me back 11 minutes later. I remember that too. 11 minutes. Margaret, he said, tell me what happened. I told him enough. Not everything. Not the cake. Not the empty chair. Not the way my daughter's voice had flattened when she told me where mothers belonged. I told him about the documents and the beach house and the conversation I overheard in my kitchen. He was silent for a moment after I finished. Then his voice changed. It became professional. Sharper. Do not sign anything Lauren gave you, he said. Do not text her about this. Do not accuse her. Bring me the folder, your current estate documents, the deed, and any messages you have. I looked toward the hallway closet where Richard's files were kept in a gray metal box. Can I protect the house? I asked. Yes, David said. But we need to do it properly. I drove to his office in Irvine that afternoon with the folder on the passenger seat and Richard's old file box in the back. Every red light felt longer than usual. Every mile felt like I was leaving one version of myself behind. David read the documents without interrupting, page after page. His mouth tightened once, then again. Finally, he removed his glasses and laid them on the desk. Margaret, this is not simple estate planning. This gives Lauren and Ethan practical control while you are still alive. With the wrong signatures, they could lease the property, borrow against it, or pressure you into a transfer later. I folded my hands in my lap. They were steady. That surprised me. I thought so, I said. David leaned back. What do you want to happen to the beach house? For the first time since Lauren called, I pictured the house without her in it. Not as punishment, as peace. I pictured widows sitting on the deck with coffee. Retired teachers reading by the window. Mothers who had forgotten what quiet felt like sleeping with the ocean close enough to hear. I want Richard's house protected, I said. I want it used by women who need somewhere safe to remember they still matter. And I want Lauren unable to sell it, mortgage it, rename it, or turn it into a business plan. David nodded slowly. Then we create a trust. He pulled a blank legal pad toward him. The Richard Whitaker Coastal Trust. Hearing Richard's name made my throat tighten, but I did not cry. Not there. Not in that chair. Once it is transferred, David said, Lauren will not be able to touch it. I looked at the blue folder one last time. Good, I said. She wanted me to know my place. I think I finally do. Lauren waited 3 days before she called me again. That was longer than I expected and shorter than I needed. By then, David had already prepared the first draft of the trust documents, requested a title report, and sent a polite email asking me to confirm whether anyone else had been promised any legal interest in the Laguna property.
Y ensured no.
Then I sat with that word for a long time.
No.
It looked so small on the screen. It felt like a locked gate. On Thursday afternoon, my phone rang while I was folding towels in the laundry room. Lauren's name appeared, and for one strange second, I saw her as she had been at 8 years old, calling from a sleepover because she missed home. I answered. Hi, Mom, she said brightly. Too brightly. How are you feeling? I am fine. Good. I was worried about you after Sunday. I placed a white towel on top of the stack. Were you? There was a tiny pause. Of course I was. I know things got a little emotional. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because she could turn a door slammed in my face into something I had done to the hinges. Anyway, she continued, Ethan and I would love to have you over for dinner this Saturday. Just family. Nothing formal. I looked at the blue folder, now empty, sitting on the counter beside Richard's file box. Just family, I repeated.
Yes.
We should talk. Clear the air. Her voice warmed, the way it did when she wanted me softened before I arrived. And maybe we can finish going over those papers. No pressure. It would just be nice to take care of it while everyone is calm. Everyone. That word told me dinner would not be just family. I said I would come. I did not tell her I had already signed my own documents that morning in David's office, each page notarized, witnessed, copied, and placed in a folder that did not belong to her. Saturday evening, I drove to Lauren's house in Newport Coast with a framed photograph on the passenger seat. Not the blue folder. Not the lemon cake. Just the photograph of her at the beach house with Richard holding his crooked paper sign. I wore navy slacks, low heels, and the pearl earrings Richard gave me on our 30th anniversary. I wanted to feel like myself when they tried to make me feel small. Lauren opened the door before I rang the bell. Her smile was perfect. Behind her, I could hear voices. More than two. Mom, she said, touching my shoulder. You look nice. That was the first warning. Lauren complimented me when an audience was nearby. I stepped inside and saw Ethan by the kitchen island pouring sparkling water into stemmed glasses. His mother, Patricia, sat on the sofa with a linen napkin on her lap. Two people I recognized from Lauren's holiday parties stood near the dining room, Mark Ellison and his wife, both in real estate. And at the far end of the table, a woman in a gray blazer arranged papers beside a black notary stamp. I took all of it in, slowly. The candles, the salad plates, the legal papers placed beside my chair like a folded napkin. Lauren followed my eyes and laughed softly. Do not look so serious, Mom. We just thought it would be easier to have Karen here in case you felt ready. Karen, the notary, gave me a professional smile that did not reach her eyes. Ethan pulled out my chair. No pressure at all, he said, while standing close enough to make the chair feel like a command. I sat because I wanted to see how far they would go. Dinner was grilled salmon, asparagus, and small talk so polished it could have cut glass. Lauren asked about my garden. Patricia told me I was lucky to have a daughter so organized. Mark mentioned that coastal properties were complicated and required forward thinking. I chewed. I swallowed. I listened. Then Lauren placed her hand over mine in front of everyone. Mom, she said almost tenderly, since Sunday was hard, maybe tonight we can do one thing that brings the family together. Ethan slid the papers toward me. Karen uncapped a pen. Mark looked down at his plate. Patricia smiled like she was watching a sweet family moment. Lauren tilted her head. Just sign, Mom. Please do not make this uncomfortable. I looked at the pen, then at my daughter, then at the photograph I had brought and set beside my water glass. Richard's smile stared back at me from a day when family had meant pancakes, sand, and a little girl who believed her mother hung the moon. I placed both hands in my lap. I already signed something, I said. The table went quiet. Lauren blinked. Ethan stopped smiling. What does that mean? He asked. I reached for my purse, took out David Morrison's business card, and laid it on top of their papers. It means, I said, you are about to meet my attorney. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. The only sound was the soft hum of Lauren's wine refrigerator and the faint clink of ice settling in a glass near the kitchen island. Lauren looked at the business card as if it had landed there by mistake. Then she looked at me. Mom, what are you talking about? Her voice was still sweet, but the edges were gone. I had heard that tone when she was 13, and I found a report card hidden under her mattress. Not scared exactly. Calculating. Ethan picked up the card before she could stop him. David Morrison, he read. Estate attorney. He tried to laugh. Margaret, this is unnecessary. We are all on the same side here. I looked at the papers they had pushed toward me. No, I said. We are at the same table. That is not the same thing. Patricia shifted on the sofa. Mark Ellison stared into his water glass. Karen, the notary, capped her pen slowly and placed it beside her stamp. She knew, maybe not everything, but enough. People who work around signatures know the difference between a family conversation and a setup. Lauren's cheeks flushed. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid, she said, turning toward the others with a small, helpless smile. She gets overwhelmed, and then everything becomes suspicious. I watched her perform concern for an audience. I had taught that woman to tie her shoes. I had sat beside her during school projects made with poster board and glitter. I had driven across Orange County in traffic to bring her forgotten cleats before a soccer game. Now she was standing in her perfect dining room, explaining me away like a problem with the weather. The doorbell rang. Ethan's face changed first. He knew. Lauren turned toward the entryway, then back at me. You invited him here? No, I said. I informed him where I would be. Ethan opened the door because pride made him do it. David Morrison walked in wearing a charcoal suit, carrying a brown leather briefcase in one hand and a slim folder in the other. He did not look angry. That was what made him frightening. He looked prepared. Good evening, he said. I am David Morrison, counsel for Mrs. Whitaker. Mrs. Whitaker. Not Mom. Not Maggie. Not the elderly woman they thought they could corner with salmon and candlelight. Mrs. Whitaker. Lauren crossed her arms. This is a private family dinner. David glanced at the notary stamp on the table, then at the papers beside my plate. It appears to be more than dinner. No one answered. David placed his folder on the table, but did not open it yet. Mrs. Whitaker has asked me to clarify the status of the Laguna Beach property, so there is no misunderstanding going forward. Ethan stepped forward. There is a misunderstanding. We were helping her plan responsibly. David nodded once. I reviewed the documents you provided her. They would have given you broad authority to control, lease, encumber, and potentially influence disposition of the property while Mrs. Whitaker is alive. Lauren snapped. That is not fair. It is accurate, David said. Then he opened the folder. As of yesterday afternoon, the Laguna Beach property has been transferred into the Richard Whitaker Coastal Trust. Lauren's mouth parted. Ethan went very still. I kept my eyes on the photograph beside my water glass. David continued, calm as a metronome. The trust is irrevocable except under narrow conditions controlled by independent trustees. The property cannot be sold by Lauren Whitaker Hayes. It cannot be mortgaged by Ethan Hayes. It cannot be used as collateral, placed into a rental development plan, or transferred into any private family business. Mark Ellison's had lifted at the words rental development plan. It was small, almost nothing. But Ethan saw it. So did I, Lauren whispered. You gave away my inheritance? There it was. Not Mom. Why were you scared? Not Mom. Did I hurt you? Not Mom. I am sorry. My inheritance. David turned one page. The house will be preserved as a retreat for widows, retired teachers, and mothers recovering from major life hardship. Mrs. Whitaker will retain lifetime access and use. After her passing, the trust will continue in Richard Whitaker's name. Patricia pressed a hand to her necklace. Karen looked down. Ethan's control cracked first. We already discussed investor interest, he said, then stopped. The room heard him. Every polished person at that table heard him. Lauren turned on him with her eyes, but it was too late. The truth had stepped into the room before David ever rang the bell. I looked at my daughter and finally spoke. You are not protecting me, Lauren. You are positioning yourself. Her face hardened. How could you humiliate me like this? I stood slowly. My knees ached, but my voice did not. You uninvited me from my own place in your life. I simply removed my home from your plans. David closed the folder. The sound was soft, final, and for the first time all evening, Lauren had nothing ready to say. Lauren's silence lasted only a moment, but it changed the room. Until then, she had been moving people like pieces on a board. The notary at the end of the table. Ethan near the papers. Patricia on the sofa, ready to praise her organization. Mark and his wife there to make the whole thing feel businesslike instead of personal. Then David closed that folder, and every piece stopped moving. Lauren looked at me as if I had become someone she did not recognize. Maybe I had. Maybe I had finally become someone she could not use. "You are really going to leave?" she asked. Her voice had dropped. No performance now. Just shock. I picked up the framed photograph from beside my water glass and held it against my chest. Yes. Ethan said my name, not Mom, not Margaret, just my name, sharp and flat. "Margaret, this affects more than you understand." I turned to him.
No, Ethan.
That is the first thing I have understood clearly in a long time. David moved beside me, not touching my arm, not rushing me, simply standing close enough that I remembered I was not alone. Lauren's face tightened. "You are punishing your own daughter because of one brunch." I looked at her then. Really looked. The woman in front of me had my eyes, Richard's chin, and a stranger's sense of entitlement. "No," I said. "I am protecting what your father and I built because of what that brunch revealed." Her mouth trembled, but her tears came late.
Too late to be about me.
That house was supposed to stay in the family. It will, I said, just not in the version of family that needs me silent first. Nobody followed me to the door. That surprised me a little. For years, I had trained myself to expect Lauren's voice behind me, calling me back, telling me I was overreacting, asking why I always had to make things difficult. But the hallway stayed quiet. Outside, the evening air smelled like cut grass and ocean mist carried in from miles away. I sat in my car for almost 10 minutes before starting the engine. My hands rested on the steering wheel. They were not shaking. My phone began lighting up before I reached Pacific Coast Highway. Lauren called once, then twice. Then came the messages. "Mom, please answer. You misunderstood everything. Ethan spoke badly, but this was not what you think. We can fix this privately. Please do not embarrass the family more." I drove past dark storefronts, palm trees, gas stations, couples walking dogs, families leaving restaurants with takeout bags swinging from their wrists. The world looked ordinary. That felt almost rude. My life had cracked open, and California kept glowing under streetlights like nothing had happened. When I reached the Laguna house, I parked in the narrow driveway and sat with a photograph in my lap. The porch light was out. I had forgotten to replace the bulb. Richard would have teased
me for that.
I could almost hear him. "Maggie, you keep a whole house standing but forget one light bulb." I laughed once. It came out uneven, but it was real. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cedar, sea air, and old books. I opened the windows one by one. The curtains lifted in the breeze. The ocean was dark beyond the deck, but I could hear it breathing. I placed the photograph on the mantel. Lauren at 8, Richard grinning. Me behind the camera, not in the picture, as usual. I used to think that was motherhood, being the one who made the memory while everyone else stood inside it. I do not think that anymore. Over the next few weeks, Lauren called less. Her messages changed shape. Anger first, then bargaining, then long paragraphs about stress, misunderstandings, and how expensive life had become. I answered only once. I wrote, "I love you, Lauren. I am willing to have a relationship based on respect. I am not willing to discuss the house." She did not respond for 11 days. David finalized the trust. The first women came that fall, 3 retired teachers from Riverside who had spent their lives taking care of everyone else. I left fresh towels in the upstairs closet and lemon cake on the kitchen counter. One of them wrote in the guest book, "I slept through the night for the first time in months." I cried when I read that. Not because I had won. Winning was too small a word for what happened. I did not get my daughter back that summer. Not really. But I got myself back. The woman who could sit on the deck at sunset without waiting for permission to matter. The woman who could love her child without handing over the last proof of her own life. People may say I signed away a beach house. They would be wrong. I signed away the belief that being a mother meant accepting whatever seat was left for me. And for the first time in years, when the ocean wind moved through that old house, it did not sound empty. It sounded free.